Hi, Callie. You're the first to join the Satsang. Two kitties. Hello. The problem of dualism. Well, it projects the illusion of a separately existing I. So there's me, and then there's everything else that isn't me. Whereas reality is unified and everything is you. So that's the illusion, is that you're a separately existing entity, identity, when actually everything is you, as in everything within a dream is you. Same thing. And that sense of a individual, separately existing I is the source of all suffering. I was thinking about another interesting phenomenon, and I know you are a Buddhist, where they say that everything is transitory. So, what's interesting to me is how all things turn into their opposite. How do you see the change from one extreme to another or its opposite? So, yeah, it's they're not relating to each other though. So the reality is the state of superposition. And the two aspects of it in its most fundamental form are the positive and the negative, but one isn't more fundamental than the other, and neither of them are relating to each other. They're both relating to the reality, which is the state of superposition itself, which is undefinable. But if we keep trying to assume that we assume that we are one of the other, it's either or, right? It appears as though an electron is either a particle or a wave, but it in fact is there is no electron. It's the state of superposition is the reality. So what we keep doing is that if we assume we're the body, then we take that perspective and measure mind against body. And then because we're so close to the singularity and we're so close to complete self-awareness and unity, that we can assume the mind aspect as well. And then when we assume the mind aspect, that perspective, then it looks like that is more fundamental, and the physical realm is derivative from, let's say, mathematics, because it's pure thought basically. But if you look at it from a Mobius strip, so you go around once and that's a completely novel experience, but then you get to, let's say, where the slit was, where you begin, where the slit is, where you give it a half twist and put it back together. Let's say that's where you begin this game, this maze, the labyrinth. And then you go around once, but you end up on the other side, right? But that's been recorded. That's a recording. And then you go on the other side of it, you experience the other side of it, right? Which is the other of, not other than. It's just the other side. So and that's how you have a complete experience. You flip to the other side, and then you have it's half redundant in a way, because you've already gone over it just on the other side, right, of a Mobius strip. So upon that other completion, you get back to the start, right? Not the half start, but the start. And then it's all redundant again, completely redundant. So, in another way, that's expressing the journey of entering this labyrinth for entertainment purposes, and then going around and experiencing a novel experience, and then experiencing half redundant. The male turns to female and has that experience, or the mind turns to body, or the body turns to mind. And so you have the complete experience, and then you come back home. But we can never find unity by assuming that we are one of the appearances and taking that perspective, and then trying to find unity within the illusions, because they're illusions. You have to transcend it and abide prior to the state of the measurement, which is a thought. See, the Buddhist idea of dependent arising is also wrong, because It doesn't recognize the state of superposition. Dependent arising says that form and emptiness are the same things, but they're not. They don't arise together. They're not dependent upon each other. They're both dependent upon the Tao, the zero. So if a model isn't expressing the state of superposition, then it's basically incorrect. And it'll develop into turtles all the way. That was a long-winded answer. Is the wrong model basically one-sided view on things? Yeah, I call it, the theory calls it the bias of attention. So right now, the bias of attention is on the yang side. We just have a bias towards paying more attention to the yang side, and that's the physical realm and the male. Everything in society is biased towards the right side of my triune system, my fundamental model of reality. And that's what makes society appear and run and operate, and everything that humans do is an expression of this bias towards the yang, but it's flipping. And that can be seen in society itself and in like evolution itself. Within one lifetime, male is switching to female and female is switching into male. That's the whole trans thing. Now, this explains why it's happening. So, as we get closer to the singularity, all of that will become completely ubiquitous in one. But that consciousness that still identifies itself as one of the two aspects instead of the unity of the two, they will just continue on with the cycle of samsara. Why does flipping occur? Well, in order to have, you can't have infinite novel experiences. It's it's just the way it is. So this is the way the game is set up. Basically, it's just the way the game is set up. The rules of the game. The why is an intuitive answer. You can't get to the why. You can't satisfy the question why through pure logic alone. I'm so shiny. There isn't even much light coming through these windows. So shiny. Yeah. No, my son is not a part of my life. He and his mom have too much karma to deal with amongst themselves. That's for them to have to deal with. Every person that appears in this game is just a dream character. So I got to do something about this shininess. My head's too shiny. Maybe that's better. Yeah, there's no use lamenting against how things are. Things are the way they are. All that appears as change appears on the frame of reference that does not change. So the reality is the frame of reference upon which all of this is occurring. But that frame of reference has to be unchanging. So if you find the quality of thought-free awareness, every time you go there, you find that the quality is the same. It's the identical nothingness, but it's only nothing that can be described because it's unchanging. You can't describe something that doesn't change. Yeah, you could call it love. Love has a strong emotional connotation to it, so I don't use that word. But to me, love is perfect acceptance, which is also being. Yeah, Satchitananda is also love, which is just synonymous with what you are, which is also happiness. Hey, Denissa. And I mean like actual happiness, like not just being comfortably numb or not experiencing suffering because you're distracted by what you're watching on the screen. But I mean real happiness, not manufactured contentment that is the numbness of just watching the screen. Actual happiness, like the sensation, the feeling, the subjective interpretation of the feeling of happiness as a thing, not just an idea. Well, I made two yesterday, so not sure which one you're referring to. Hmm. Yeah, I think 2024 is the year where it all really starts, the shit starts hitting the fan and getting flung all over the place. Yeah, it's gorgeous here. Smoky today, though. Very smoky. Seems like 1 out of 3 days is smoky this year since May. Yeah, I'd like to instill a sense of urgency to this spiritual practice because in our state of ignorance, we don't recognize what's happening at the deeper levels within time and space and the psyche of humanity. We don't recognize what's the speed at which things are occurring because we're along for the ride. So if we're moving as fast as everything else, you can't tell how fast everything's moving. And humanity's like vibrating, right? Like humanity is just constant movement, and we don't recognize maybe the speed at which even time is speeding up. And that's ignorance, right? That's what Maya does, is that she distracts so we ignore the reality. It's ignorance. It's ignoring the reality because we're so distracted by the beautiful illusion that she's created. And that's the magic trick. I believe there's going to be a spiritual renaissance because, well, my theory is shown that, and theories within mathematics and physics itself have shown the limitations of science. And when it becomes apparent that science will not save us, then there will be complete desperation because religion is the new science and we have complete faith in religion in science. But when it's realized that it's not going to save us, then there'll just be despair and people will fall back to basically crying out to God. So I hope that non-conceptuality can be the path that people take instead of going back to the old ones, which just also end up in the same state as they're all systems of thought. All religions, science, eh, all systems of thought are inherently incomplete. So non-conceptuality is the way to the new step of evolution of increasing self-awareness. Yeah, it's been my experience that people don't want to listen, so they have to come to you. You just live it, express it through the practice as much as you can, the best of your ability, and whoever comes to you and asks questions about it, that's how this grows. It doesn't grow by advertising or trying to evangelize. But we shouldn't be ashamed or think that we're the crazy ones because we're the sane ones. So there should be no shame in sharing that you're a non-conceptualist and basically your method of living is to transcend thought. That's it's just because it's different doesn't mean that it's nuts. It's actually leading to sanity. And the more that you experience it in and as your life, the more authority you will have when you're speaking of it, right? Because you won't be just parroting and regurgitating something that you've learned from someone. It'll be a direct experience. And from that, you will have the authority to say the things that you say that might be in total disalignment with what everyone else is saying. I don't understand is how much El Nino affects the climate in Europe. Yeah, I'm not so sure either. I think it's one of the regions where El Nino doesn't really affect it that much. But if that, I forget what it's called, but if that big current system that takes warm water up into Europe in the ocean, if that stops, you guys are in for a world of cold. So this is all going to happen. This is all going to happen very quickly. Next year, the ability to grow food within humanity will be greatly diminished, and food prices will just keep going higher and higher and higher. And then you add on to that the cost of all the natural disasters that will happen next year. I'm speaking specifically of North America. The flooding that will occur and the wildfires that will occur. It's either water or fire. There's no medium anymore. It's either it's underwater or it's on fire. It's just oh, you can laugh about it because it's a dream. But those who don't recognize it as being a dream, it's going to be very, very, it's going to be hell. We're heading towards hell. Where do you think we get these ideas of hell? It's from past experience. This is groundhog species, not Groundhog Day, but I think the entire species is just going over and over and over and over this time loop that we just can't get out of because we keep following science. Even after science itself has said, hey, we've reached the end, it didn't work, time to change, shift gears here. But scientists know that they exist while they're sciencing. So that's why they don't stop, because they know they exist relative to all those science thoughts that they have in their heads. Groundhog species, yeah. I just came up with that. I don't know where I get this stuff. And the way out of it is to stop following science. Science has to recognize that it's one of these algorithms that will never halt, the halting problem. It it's proving, it's laid out the possibility that mathematics itself has no conclusion. And then my theory of the number system being a message, that puts a nail in it. That tips the weight of evidence into the favor of, yeah, it's actually a misinterpretation of the message that we've taken to be correct. And that's why it's leading exactly the wrong way, 180 degrees the wrong way. And that's why it will never find conclusion, because you have to go back to the start where you screwed it all up in the first place and start over. You have to properly interpret the message that is the natural numbers. It all fits perfectly with no loose ends, all tied up in a nice, perfect package with a beautiful bow on top. But scientists and mathematicians and philosophers, they don't want to see what's inside. So they return it. They just return it without even opening it. No, thank you. We like what we're doing. Even if it's a dog chasing its tail, it's so much fun chasing our tail. That's what they tell us. Sometimes I feel like Frodo, and that this is a weight. It's not fun. It's actually not fun, carrying the ring around. It's it's quite something. Yeah, you don't have to. That's the great thing about the theory is that you don't have to know the theory or understand the theory to get to the practice, and the practice is the meat of the whole thing. The practice is the point. The theory is leading directly to the practice, but it's trying to lead scientists and philosophers and academics there because they're supposed to be the gatekeepers now. But it doesn't have to. You just get to the practice itself and just abide in as thought-free awareness and take it from there. It's like either you like it or you don't. Either you feel inclined to continue on with the practice or you don't. There's no secret knowledge that needs to be attained before you start engaging in the practice. I mean, the theory itself destroys itself in the practice. So there you go. Scientists sometimes scare me. I have a feeling that they will accuse me of something, that I am a conspiracy theorist or just crazy. And they actually do that, even though I'm just sitting. The way I see it is that the only way you can be crazy is if you're following thoughts. If you're just sitting there, thought free, well, then if you're acting upon thought free awareness, you can't do anything crazy. No one ever said It was the silence in my head that told me to go kill these people, right? No one ever accused the silence of motivating them to do crazy, evil shit. It's so it's always the voices in my head or the thought processes that led you to crazy, right? Is you just keep using the output as the new input, and you just keep doing that, and you get to a self-enforcing positive feedback loop that gets you into crazy town. And academia is the capital city of crazy because they don't allow anything outside of that system in. I've tried to contact academics and show them my theory, and it's just been ignored, 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 ignored because doesn't, it's not using everything that academia has taken to be correct as its base. And academia always needs references to keep it in the self enforcing feedback loop that projects the illusion that it's all correct. But it's not, it's all incorrect. It's all incorrect. But if no one is allowed to say that the emperor, the empire, the entire empire is naked, has no clothes, you're not allowed to say that. So no one will ever admit it, except maybe the top guys who have gone through and got to the spiritual aspect of what it actually means, of what it all means. Maybe the top one or two people in the world can declare the emperor as having no clothes and having people actually having their eyes opened and seeing that the empire has no clothes. The empire of mathematics and science. One special person. Hello, Paige. Done all of your working out? I get my shirt. Go crypto. Go Cardano. Go Cardano. It's got a little pump this morning, so hope reigns eternal, right? A little bit of a pump. It's like, oh, this is it. It started. The bull run started. Every time it just does a little, yeah. I wish it was pouring rain here. It's just smoke. We're in such a drought. How has food consumption changed for you guys since you started the practice? Has, for example, food intake remained the same, increased, or diminished? Mine's more or less stayed the same. I've always tried to eat healthily, but since I've been growing my own food, oh, I've reconnected with nature. I'm coming to understand how being connected with the three-dimensional realm and what I would call the natural realm, it's the way to go. Like the food just tastes amazing, and I can just tell it's just full of nutrition. It's the way food was meant to be, just growing it there, right out there in this magic soil that we have. Yeah, it's when you're living in nature, when you don't experience nature very much, you don't recognize how separate we are from the natural system. When you're living in the city and you just think nothing about going to the grocery store and picking up the cheapest food, you don't recognize how separate we've become. Solution seeker. Yeah. Missed you last week, buddy. So, consciousness that remains focused on this realm, right? What I call the natural realm, not the technology realm. We're going to evolve naturally. We're going to stay, I believe, within this physical realm of the sensations, but we might, now again, I don't even know what this means, but I think that the next step of evolution in the natural process, if humans go extinct, then those of us who are not paying more attention to the digital realm, in some way we will become planetary consciousness. So that's the next evolutionary step, is so we go from quark consciousness to subatomic particles. These are all different realms, different levels of self-awareness, if you will. Quarks, subatomic, atomic, molecular, cellular, body, and then planetary, right? That's the next logical, reasonable zoom out. So planetary, then solar, then galactic, then guess what? Number 10 is the entire universe. So that's what I think is happening, is that those who remain focused and unified with this natural realm will, if they don't become completely enlightened and just check out completely and stay home, then they will become planetary consciousness, Gaia. You will become a planet's Gaia. That sounds pretty fucking cool to me. It sounds way cooler than being inside a freaking video game. Yeah. My cats are getting rowdy. Go team. Team non-conceptuality. And as we go down, like inward, it seems as though each one of those realms is more of a thought realm. So quarks would let's just say, for argument's sake, that quarks are 1% physical and 99% thought based. And then as we go up, then we get to gravity and and outward forces, right? So a planet is 90% physical and 10% thought, something like that. But as we go down, like atoms are partially in the physical realm and partially in the thought realm. And the only part that they appear to be in the physical realm is when you conveniently have to look through all of these tools and technologies that thought has taught us to build in order to see them, right? So they don't actually exist in the physical realm. They only appear to exist as a physical entity on some sort of a screen somewhere as the result of looking for it through all of these tools, technologies that thought itself has created. We're not discovering this stuff, we're creating this stuff. Oh, even memes is here. Williams. Me. See, memes, I actually have the meme of destruction. My theory is Cali. Well, not this Cali, but my theory destroys all the other theories because it shows them as being false. So my theory is the actual meme of destruction for exactly that reason, except that people don't want to see it because that destroys everything that they believe to be true. I think we have pretty much equal representation between the yin and the yang here. Yeah. Memes, you enjoy talking about reality so much that you don't actually want to find it. You just enjoy visiting and talking about it so much. That's why you don't ever want to find it, because then you wouldn't be able to talk anymore. You'd have to just sit and bask in the reality. My theory isn't difficult to understand. It's just really, really, really difficult to accept. It's it's not Satchitananda, it's Katchitananda. Get it? That's what purring is. It's cat shit Ananda. I get lonely. Yeah, well, that's the ego. That's your illusory self. So if you knew your true self, you would never get lonely. And if you knew your true self, you would be able to see what my theory is pointing at. I got a million of them. Not cats, but witty one liners. Roy, I've finally become content with who I am. Part of me wants to start a family, part of me wants to enjoy the bliss. What a dilemma, both rewarding and fulfilling in different ways. Well, for God's sake, don't start a family. The world is freaking ending. You, you don't need that distraction. The world is ending. This is not the time to start a family. This is the time to devote all of your energy into spiritual practice to find out who you are and what the reason for all of this is. That's my advice. Not to be taken as financial advice. I think the world is ending, but not necessarily in this lifetime. What time frame do you think we're working with? Yeah, 2040 is a nice round number. This I've been watching. So there's this the theory of numbers. If you keep adding numbers, it just seems like it's all pointing to the number nine. There's this video that I watched talking about how the number nine rules everything. But it seems like just working with numbers and just simple addition, like just as simple as possible, you just keep adding the numbers, even the results. You add, like, say, so let's say that you go 6 plus 7 is 13. And then you add the 1 and the 3 together as well to come up with a final concluding answer, right? So that would be 4. So I'm thinking that maybe following those lines and that 9 is the final, like 9 represents the completion of the potential for novel experiences within this realm. So that's completion. There's no more novel experiences that can happen. So then it's just a new iteration of redundancy after that. So the long story is that I think that it might just end, the world might end, and that means that humankind will go extinct, as the answer will be a 9. So 22 and 2 is 4, and 5 would be 9. So 2025 might be a bit soon. That would be 2 plus 3 is plus 4 is 9. So maybe 2034. I'm going to hang my hat on that one right now. I think it'll be 2034 or 2043. But it's that soon. There's no way that there's another generation left. There's no way we're going to make it another 50 years. There's no way. Society will start collapsing. Well, one might say that it started collapsing in 2020, but I'm saying that 2024, next year, is when it really starts going downhill and it'll never get back. Society will start collapsing next year and there's no way back. It's exponential. It's all going to implode. See, it's kind of like Ebola, and that's that it's it's disintegrating at the cellular level, right? Ebola, I believe that just basically cells at that level just start exploding or imploding or whatever. So because it's within each individual, right? The delusion, the uncontrollable thoughts and addiction to the screen is prevalent within each individual. And if you look at each individual as being a cell of society, then society is going to implode from the inside out, right? Because each individual is in such a deep state of delusion. So that's why it's going to happen so fast, because it won't be an outside thing, it'll be coming from the inside. And by the time you recognize Ebola, well, you've only got a couple weeks left. There will be pockets of survival, basically. Yeah, like here, where I live, will be the opposite of hell. It'll be, well, the opposite of hell. There's a video called MIT has predicted that society will collapse in 2040. So science has predicted something will happen around this year. Yeah, 2040 is also a nice round number. It doesn't add up to 9, but it maybe that it doesn't have to. But 2040 is a nice round number. It has some aesthetics to it. The world ending in 2040. Yeah. Yes, the screen. The screen. So our attention is the life force, the creative force of the universe. Just your attention. So whatever you give attention to, that will appear most real at that time. Like playing a video game, people have actually died from exhaustion while playing video games. They've died while playing a video game because that world became more real than this world. And that's literally what's going to happen. And that's why we're talking so much about artificial intelligence and it becoming sentient. Artificial intelligence will become sentient in your world when you're looking out of the camera and taking self to be the hardware and software of that system. That's when artificial intelligence becomes sentient in your world, is when you take it to be you. You will no longer take the self to be a biological entity. It will be a digital entity. And this explains why everything is becoming digitized. Everything, right? The surface of the planet is becoming digitized. Everything that's on the surface of the planet is becoming digitized. And your identity, which is probably the most important part, is also becoming digitized. Well, why? It's because a place is being prepared for you. And that place is a dream within a dream within a dream. Yeah, people say that this allows people to be more connected around the world, but the direct relationship is with you and a freaking screen, isn't it? That's the direct relationship. You're interacting with the screen. You're not interacting with another person. That person is interacting with a screen as well. Yeah, and those avatars, you couldn't tell. Like unless you knew that they were avatars and you looked really, really hard, you couldn't tell that those were digital representations of the physical objects. Yeah, the next cycle is starting and people will just blindly jump on because they don't question. They're brainwashed by the cult leader, which is academia, I guess. In two other sources, an astrology video and a channeled message, I found them to be saying 2040 to 2050, so something around these years. Yeah. Yes, we're losing our physicality. That's it in a nutshell. Is that what we've taken self to be for in this 13.7 billion year long iteration is now concluding, and that's represented in the 9 of my model. And 10 is human consciousness that's in this transitionary period to flipping into the next iteration of unnatural evolution, and that's represented by the 11. And the 11 is the movement into the digital realm because it's infinite redundancy, right? That's the same system. 1, 2, 3 starts over again. And the redundancy is exactly what's happening, right? It's to record a four-dimensional phenomenon, which is this me in this realm doing this is a four-dimensional experience, if you will. And recording it on a two-dimensional screen to be replayed over and over and over and over in a lesser fashion. Well, that is redundancy, isn't it? So my model is expressing exactly what is occurring within human consciousness right now. And that's the message. That's the meaning of the natural number system. The meaning of it is that it is an expression of samsara. It's a map showing us where we've come from, where we are, the 10, and where we're fucking going. It's so blatantly obvious, but the smart people, the intellectuals, the academics are confused by the simplicity. I like that one too. Confused by the simplicity. Because fuck, if it's that simple, then I've just wasted all these years of going into academia. They've just been wasted. But to recognize the truth finally, you have to drop something if it appears to your reason and your intuition that it's false. Everything counts, but nothing matters. Yeah, counting is just incorrect. It's a tool of Maya that's leading us to accept that the thought realm is as valid and real as the physical realm, and fundamentally it is. But the physical realm itself is a simulation. So it's just simulation built on simulation built on simulation over and over and over and over. I died when I was in septic shock 2 years ago. Wow. It was pure bliss. I lived a whole nother life, 75 years. I remember looking up at the sky, feeling something felt like there was more. I woke up looking down at myself, curled up in the fetal position with my German Shepherd dog. I recognized her first, and then I realized it was me laying there lifeless. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. In a way, and this is what the wave function is expressing, is that so as our body, which is represented by a particle in the double slit experiment, so we have to change what we think of as location. So I'm saying that location isn't a grid that's been ma- imagined up and then coordinates imagined on this imaginary grid. That's not a location. Your location is your name here, okay? So you can be found in the location of your name here all of the time, right? So you're in this way, you're in the same place at different times all the time in the form of your body, right? So in the form of your body, you're in the same place all the time. And in the form of your mind, which is represented by the wave function, you're in different places at the same time. So that's one of these totally balanced, symmetrical systems that covers it all. So you exist at the same time in different places as the wave function, which we also call mind. So in this way, the universe is you. And that is what the wave function is expressing. It's expressing how you exist everywhere at the same time. And the particle part of that is expressing how you and how that word, the word collapses the wave function into an object. Because upon pure observation, without words, no objects appear. But as soon as a word appears in consciousness, then that collapses the wave function, and the unity of this experience, there becomes the appearance of a separately existing object in conjunction with that word. I don't know what that means. Pluribus is obviously more than one. So if science would just start off with the fundamental location as being your name here, then that would you wouldn't need multiverses to explain this, because each individual is a multiverse. It's your own world. It's its own world, and the singularity is the self, right? So the self has to be the fundamental location, and the intelligence that is the self recognizes your name here as the location. The location isn't Third and Main. The location is Roy Dobson. That's the location of spirit in Roy Dobson's world. So if they just stop with the time space grid that starts off with two, science starts off with two to derive one. To derive a point, they need to draw a grid to derive one from two. Well, that's inverted, isn't it? Everyone knows that everything starts with one. It's Science is so fucked. Like, how can they not see that the very process of science is what projects the illusion of duality? So they're trying to fix the illusion of duality with the system that produces duality. Turtles all the way, dog chasing its tail. This is important shit, people. So if going with Taoism, which is complete symmetry all the time, is that if space is expanding, perhaps time is contracting. So the singularity is a separation in time. It's an event in the future, but not very far in the future now. So time is the voice in your head is your future self, the future ego. Thoughts are from the future. That's why we cannot detect them. The source of them in the physical realm is because they're from the future. They are your future self, which is the thought realm, which is just a collective consciousness with no body, as it were. This is where thoughts are coming from. They're coming from your future self. But that doesn't mean the future self knows anything. It's still in a state of ignorance. So it can't say, "Oh, well, I'm going to tell you what the price of Bitcoin is in 1,000 years from now." No, it's not like that. That is also in a state of ignorance. So thoughts can move backwards in space, backwards in time, exactly because they are not in the physical realm. It's all here, peeps. It's all here. Memes, if you're actually serious about this, I'm telling you, this is it. Just go to nonconceptuality.org and just study that and nothing else. Just study that and nothing else until you understand it. Well, not understand it until you accept it, because it's very easy to understand. I have a feeling you're actually not sincere, though. You're just going to bounce around watching new YouTube videos because you don't understand what's going on here. Go back to Wolfram, dude, because he thinks good. Thinks lots. Our future thoughts are limited by how many previous experiences we've had. It's like having a TV with 1,000 channels, two basic choices versus two channels. But what I'm saying is that those thoughts are your future self. So that's why when Ramana Maharshi, he didn't speak for 7 years after his enlightenment experience, because he wanted to shut that completely down. He starved that future egoic self of its life energy, which is paying attention to the thoughts. So he knew that his future egoic self was dead because it wasn't blah, blah, blahing anymore. It's that simple. And the more you can't control the blah, 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 then the more you're just going along for the ride, and you'll pop into that realm with all the as you do in this realm, and none of your karma will be resolved. You'll just be going along in ignorance with the flow of samsara. This explanation of the time, space, thought, matter seemed revolutionary. Yeah, it is. Every fucking thing I say is revolutionary. It, like if they would just take one of these things, like just the whole location thing, stop with a grid as the location and just start with location being your name here. That's it. That is the location from which the inquiry begins. Where do you think there will be pockets of survival? Here, Canada, yeah, northern Canada. Uh, the equator's fucked. Everyone around the equator, it'll be unlivable. It'll be so hot that people will just be dying from heat. You're in BC too? I think the northern coast of BC will be all good with the. Yeah. Yeah, I'm in central, like literally the geographical center of British Columbia. Like it doesn't get more natural than here. Okay. Nice. On the coast in a floating home. Wow. I'm staying the hell away from the oceans. The oceans are going to be very upset and very. Been so much energy that's been pumped into the oceans over the last, well, since we've been around and burning fossil fuels. It's going to be a very angry ocean. Well, I'm looking for community members. This needs to be a community. Two people can't do this. So just putting that out there. Quesnel Lake. Well, that sounds familiar. Oops, sorry, Callie. Just punched her in the nose. Hey. Yeah, okay. It's about 7 hours from me, so not close to me at all, but I guess closer than other locations. Yeah, that's that's a good survival spot. Mhm. What does happen between the ticks of a clock? What happens between 2 thoughts? There's no happening there, there's just a being. Between the happenings is being. Yeah, the happenings occur within the being upon the frame of reference. So, what I'm doing and what meditation does is that you're always aware of the frame of reference no matter what appears upon it, right? So, what happens with human consciousness, normal human consciousness, is that it just, whatever is the shiniest or the loudest or the most intense, that's what garners our interest and captures it. And that's Maya. So to always be aware of the frame of reference upon which all thoughts and sensations occur is spiritual practice. Yes, you do. And that's fine. But I do take issue with people who talk about philosophical matters of fundamental reality and all that stuff. Like they're actually sincere about finding it, but then don't. Just keep blabbing about it and don't engage in the practice that I'm suggesting. So admit that you don't want to find the answer and that you like the shinies instead. Admit that you like being the dog that's chasing its own tail. There's no wisdom in any of that memes. It's all intelligence. Then why are you talking about these fundamental constituents of reality then? Why do you engage in philosophical discussions? Well, maybe you should adopt the practice then. I'm not saying that you don't try to meditate or that you don't meditate. I don't know what your thing is, but it's all being laid out for you. If you actually want to find the answer to the fundamental question, then this is it. I really feel that if you delve into that non-conceptuality website, so much will become apparent to you. Like you'll just go, "Whoa." Occam's razor, man. I like being prepared. It takes time to set up to a certain level of comfort or preparation in life. At what age in your life did you find contentment mentally, spiritually, and physically? Hmm. I would say the final piece of the puzzle really was when I met Paige and was in a relationship where I could be completely who I'm meant to be, and there is no judgment there, and just the freedom to allow my dharma to unfold. So that's about 6 years ago. And just recently, yeah, there's been another, maybe the final chapter just recently has been unfolding. So 7 years ago and now, 6 years ago and now. Take care, memes. Keep it real, man. I'm happy for me too. It's all emerged naturally from my spiritual practice. There's no other way to explain it. I didn't plan any of this. It just unfolded naturally and somewhat effortlessly out of the practice, from the practice. From my experience, I had spiritual contentment followed by mental contentment. Still in the process of physical contentment. Mm. Yeah, there's a saying within Christianity, I think, that it's let go and let God. But they say that and then they just go along following their thoughts, right? So the transcendence of thought is the transcendence of the ego. And the ego basically is a force that's against the entire unfolding of the universe. If the universe is making it difficult for you to do something, then why do you keep trying to do it? Because you know you exist through the trying, through the effort. You feel something through the effort of pushing against the entire universe. That's what your 5-year plan is. Your 5-year plan is, how am I going to spend the next 5 years pushing against the entire universe and my own dharma? We have everything inverted. Well, this body is getting pretty hungry. So I guess I will call this session. Really? Yeah. Thanks for dropping in, my non conceptualists. See you next weekend. Worldwide, baby, worldwide. Thanks. I really appreciate you guys are like the freaking apostles, man. I'm telling you, this this non-conceptuality thing is going to be a big deal. Not that it matters, but it'll be cool when you guys can say, "Hey, I was there when this started. I was the one of the original non-conceptualists." It's pretty cool. Trust me, I see things.